Nuernavio, Medical Wing. Clara entered the medical wing with the grace that befitted her status as a princess. Her arrival caused nurses, physicians, and other crew members to halt and either kneel before her in reverence or bow their heads in respect. She caught everyone's attention with a single hand wave and a gentle smile. I welcome your greetings, but don't lose focus on your true work and duty. Continue tending to those in need and ignore my presence, Clara declared politely. The response was immediate, and activity resumed even though everyone gave her and her bodyguard a wide berth to move freely and uninterrupted. There are more wounded than I expected. The wing is nearly full, commented Cynthia. Many came from the Gallant Venture and the other ships, Clara replied. Our wounded are numerous. I'm glad that is the case, for I prefer having wounded over casualties, she said, finding who she wanted to see first. It wasn't someone important, not in the traditional sense, but it represented the result of her gamble. That alone had its own merit to consider, and she couldn't ignore it. Walking to a Medicare pod, her gaze softened when she peered inside a child with severe burns across his body. Half his face was simply gone, and many patches of skin were missing, but he'd make a full recovery in time. To her surprise, the child was awake, his remaining good eye turning to face her. How are you feeling, young one? Asked the princess in a sisterly tone. Pain, all over, the child replied weakly. Proud. I've made Shipmother proud. Have I earned my place? Shipmother? Clara asked, confused. She'd heard that term previously, but she had no idea what that meant. Shipmother, the young boy replied, closing his eye. Ship, mother, he said, and promptly lost consciousness again. Poor thing, Clara lamented, placing her palm against the glass. She stared at the boy for several seconds until a shift in Cynthia's posture alerted her that someone was approaching them. Turning her head to see the newcomer, she had to suppress a frown when she saw who it was. Sergeant Salazar Reed. The man in question stopped when he was addressed, bowing his head in submission. Greetings, my princess. I pray that your presence here doesn't mean that you require medical attention. It does not, Clara replied, never losing her cordial, warm tone. Inspecting the man closer, she noticed that the noble was disheveled and likely near the brink of exhaustion. It also didn't escape her eyes that he favored his left leg for support. Are you injured, Sergeant Reed? Exhaustion and bruises, nothing more, Your Majesty, Salazar confirmed, his voice weak. His eyes turned to the Medicare pod and then to half a dozen other pirate children and adolescents who had received minor injuries during rescue operations. They received worse. That I can see, said the purple-eyed woman. A tense moment of silence followed, broken when the princess pressed on. Sergeant Reed, do you perchance know what this shipmother is? Ungal was awake? Salazar asked, surprised, taking a step closer. Seeing as the blue-haired woman didn't object to his advance, he took another step and then another until he was able to touch the pod, standing next to the princess and looking down at the burned young boy. He's been drifting in and out of consciousness ever since he was put in the pod. Clara stepped back, pleasantly surprised, though she didn't show it. Ungal? His name, Salazar sighed. I've decided to memorize their names. They were pirates, but they've shown a level of dedication I did not expect from them. Your Majesty was right in sparing their lives and giving them a chance. Without taking his eyes from the boy, he continued. They call the Nuernavio ship mother. In fact, every ship they are to become a member of is their ship mother. Their protector, their home, he scoffed. Pirate nonsense. It drives them to find a place to belong to, he finished with a sad frown. Clara turned her gaze back to the kid, Ungal, and stared at him for several moments before smiling and turning her attention back to Salazar. Without saying anything, she left while the disgraced noble bowed his head in respect. It appears there may be hope for him yet, Clara commented once they were outside his hearing range. Perhaps, Cynthia said uncaringly. The insult he'd incurred was still fresh in her mind, and she would not be quick to neither forgive nor forget. The next 20 minutes passed slowly as Clara took her time seeing the wounded. She allowed them to see her and even exchanged a few words with some of them, regardless of whether they were nobles or commoners. Once the shock of her presence had passed, she made her way to the section of the wing reserved for the captured traitors in need of medical attention. Sitting guarded by 2 Marines was Ciro Ortega, deprived of his armor and wearing his uniform proudly. Once she was close enough, the Marines saluted and stepped back, while Ciro stood up and politely bowed his head. Your Majesty, the captain said in a formal, dignified tone earned through countless hours of practiced etiquette. Captain Ciro Ortega, Clara answered his greeting with a disarming smile. It is a pleasure to meet an honorable man such as yourself. You honor me with your kind words, your majesty, Ciro replied, raising his head. As my superiors are unable or unwilling to provide you with such, allow me to congratulate you on your most magnificent victory. The forces under your command, my princess, have proven to be far superior to our own in every regard. Clara tilted her head slightly. Such praise would ring hollow had it come from anyone else, Captain. You've more than earned my respect through your actions. Thus I thank you. However, you most certainly underestimate your own capabilities. Victory was well within your grasp, a fact I will not deny, your majesty. However, we were outmaneuvered in such ways none could have predicted. Please send my regards, admiration, and praise to Commander Redford Kalin. He made a fool of us all without engaging us in open combat, said Ciro with utmost sincerity. As a show of my respect, I will pass your message gladly, Captain. Clara accepted, internally smiling and considered for a moment toying with Ciro's perceived reality, but rejected the opportunity to have some fun at his expense. It was neither the time for her game nor safe to insinuate that Redford, brilliant as he was, achieved victory on his own accord. In return, Captain, could you answer me a question that refuses to leave my mind? To the best of my abilities, my princess, Ciro replied. According to your service records salvaged from the Gallant Ventures archives and your service chit, you excelled in many fields, one of them being close-quarters combat. Your skill with swords and axes was of particular note. She paused for a moment for dramatic effect and narrowed her eyes slightly. I've seen the footage, Captain. Why did you relinquish your advantage so easily? Ciro inhaled deeply and slowly exhaled, searching for the correct words to utter. Once he found them, he began. If I could inquire who that man really is, I would, my princess. But I doubt that even if you entertain me with an answer and not a prompt dismissal, the truth would be eluded. What is clear, however, is that Sir Wyatt Staples is not a Royal Marine. What he is, I can't fathom. A sense of déjà vu struck Clara, silently pressing Ciro to continue. He obliged. A monster. A knight. A warrior. Ciro shook his head slowly. We thought Maximilian had killed him, yet he boarded the Gallant Venture. How is this possible? What little morale remained after the apparent death of our lone wolf collapsed when that treacherous worm of Javier Wunder fled like the witless coward that he is. There was nothing more we could do but mount a last stand. Honor and duty demanded it of me to lead it. So I did, and I watched. By the heavens, I watched! Such ruthlessness tempered by compassion, mercy, and honor. A man driven by conviction, moved by ingenuity, and brutal in execution. Forgive me for saying this, my princess, for you may have my head for speaking the truth, but Wyatt Staples is... No descriptor can do him justice. The only word that comes close is... Killer! Clara interjected, not as a question, but as an affirmation. Ciro nodded. I knew our defeat was inevitable. Seeing him being merciful gave me hope, a chance, an opening. Once we came to trade words, I took my chance. So many had died already. So many unnecessary deaths for no gain whatsoever but to sate the wounded pride of a single woman, he said with disdain. I would not grant him an easy victory despite the approaching Royal Marines. Bereft of options, I used a formal duel and accommodated myself to suit his conditions. In retrospect, perhaps I shouldn't have, he said, idly massaging his bruised chin and lower jaw. There was a moment in your duel where you froze. Why? Cynthia asked all of a sudden. I was terrified, my lady, Ciro replied without hesitation. I've seen into the eyes of deranged pirates, slaver scum, murderers, and the worst humanity has to offer. Peering into his eyes so deeply was a different experience, unlike anything I've experienced. I saw a void staring at me. It was like looking into the eyes of something trying to appear human. I do not doubt that Wyatt Staples is a true killer. Remorseless, ruthless, and brutal, but not mindless. By the prince, he is anything but a mindless beast. Your sincerity and forwardness are outstanding, Captain, Clara declared a second later. I'm your prisoner, my princess. Lying would only dishonor me and insult you. My loyalty belongs to the principality, but duty and honor made me answer the call of my house and that of our betters, Ciro replied without hesitation, and no small amount of pride in his voice. The fact that I'm being tended to and not executed means that I'm either worthy of ransom, I have something to offer as a prisoner, or I'm not worth sullying your hands with my blood. Astute observation, Captain, replied Clara with a playful smile. Then I must assume you've decided my fate, my princess? Ciro asked, unbothered. I have much to do and process before I make any final decisions, my dear Ciro. I can assure you that your fate will not be grim, Clara revealed. I've claimed the gallant venture and the rest of your fleet as my own. Almost the entirety of your commoner crew have pledged themselves to me and my cause. Only those truly loyal to their masters have denied me. All surviving nobles have been disarmed and confined, with minor exceptions. Her eyes moved to the Medicare pods at the furthest end of the wing, where Casimir Caiston and Maximilian Userek resided unconscious. "Thank you for your mercy, my princess," Ciro exclaimed, bowing his head for a brief moment. "If I may, my princess, what became of Felicity Centaur?" "She's alive and confined to a holding cell," replied the princess. "Her fate is within my grasp. I will not be kind, considerate, or generous with her. All I can promise is that I will have no involvement in her ultimate demise." Ciro nodded once. "I understand, my princess. My personal opinion regarding Lady Felicity is of no importance, but I hold no esteem for her. Whatever her fate may be, it is out of my control. I've done my duty to the best of my abilities. I can rest easy," he finished, closing his eyes. Clara remained silent for several seconds, then smirked. "Is there something else you wish to tell me, Captain?" Ciro blinked, surprised, then nodded weakly. "My princess, may I speak with Sir Wyatt in person? I wish to congratulate him for his victory and thank him for sparing my life at the great cost of dishonoring himself for doing so. He is resting at the present time. You will have the chance to express your gratitude in person," Clara confessed, earning a solemn nod from the captain. "Then I shall refrain from taking more of your time, your majesty." "Proud is the red feather," said Ciro, proudly uttering his house's motto as he saluted the blonde woman in front of him. With a courteous tilt of her head, Clara left the captain behind, allowing the Marines to resume their vigil and a nurse to approach him. Satisfied with the conversation, she moved to Casimir's Medicare pod. His right arm and leg were covered by a blue cloth, where the stumps would be located. The viscous substances inside prevented infection and rot from setting in and ensured his limbs would be cloned or, failing that, receive cybernetic prosthetics. "Was his punishment excessive, Cynthia?" she asked all of a sudden. "I wouldn't have been so merciful," Cynthia answered without hesitation. "He will recover. Physically, psychologically. If this Caiston traitor has a strong psyche, then his recovery may be feasible." Clara narrowed her eyes as she looked at his unconscious form. He was the most cordial out of the four during negotiations at Balakura. Such a shame. He's a good man, but he lacked the courage to stand against Felicity and prevent this madness from happening. "A noble fool, nothing more," she finished with a tiny sigh, then made her way to Maximilian's pod. His armor had been removed, revealing his muscular body and a plethora of tiny scars across his chest, abdomen, and upper arms. A breathing mask was connected to his face, aiding his breathing while the pod repaired the damage to his larynx, trachea, and lungs as much as it could. He had survived the destruction of his fighter thanks to his sealed armor, but it had been compromised and damaged near the point of uselessness. Worse yet, his oxygen supply and recycler had received severe damage, slowly lacerating and burning him from the inside out. Had Nultar Olkara failed to detect him only a few minutes later, Maximilian would have likely died. But he was alive, and that was everything Clara truly cared about as ideas and plans formed in her mind regarding the lone wolf. Turning around, she spotted one of the head physician's assistants and, with a hand gesture, summoned him. "How may I be of service, my princess?" he asked, lowering his head. "Inform the head physician that I must be contacted immediately once Maximilian regains consciousness," she ordered, walking past the assistant. "As you command, my princess," replied the assistant. Once the two women were outside the medical wing, they made their way to Clara's next destination. They traveled in contemplative silence for several minutes until they reached the ship's brig. Upon their arrival, the guards bowed their heads and let them in without question. Both women ignored the captives, nobles with enough influence and standing within their houses to be worth something. Most of them glared at the princess, choosing wisely to refrain from making their voices known. They quickly found Felicity's cell, and Clara allowed a smug smirk to form on her lips. With a single nod from her, Cynthia opened the cell's door and closed it once they were inside. A second later, a privacy field appeared around them, ensuring their conversation would remain private. "Are you here to gloat, Reaper?" Felicity spat from her seated position. Her right arm was encased, and she wore a mask that hid her wounded face. Her eyes remained defiant, though lacking the fire and intensity previously found in them. "I am," Clara confessed as she stood in front of the ebony-skinned woman. Felicity Centaur, whatever possessed you to attack us? To attack me? I say this with all the disrespect and vitriol I can conjure, whore. May demons take you and drag you to the endless darkness and fiery pits of hell or whatever punishment awaits you, Felicity cursed, glaring death upon Clara. Cynthia took a step that echoed inside the cell, but Clara stopped her with a single gesture. She looked down at Felicity with a disappointed look in her eyes. Insult me all you wish, Centaur. Your taunts and pettiness are beneath me, and your antics will certainly not save you from your just punishment. With a hum, she continued. You wanted to kill me, that's more than obvious. But why? Was that your original plan? Was it out of revenge? A dark, throaty chuckle escaped past her lips. It doesn't really matter. What matters is that you failed, and you've generously delivered unto me 4 additional black ships for me to use as I see fit. Enjoy your victory while it lasts, murderer, vanquisher, monster. It won't last. His Lord Regent will be victorious. Guided by his hand, the principality shall prosper like never before in its history, Felicity exclaimed, glaring at the princess. My uncle is a great man, Clara agreed. But he will fail. No one is infallible. Not me. Not my siblings. Not him. And as you've monstrously demonstrated, neither are you, Centaur. Tell it to someone who cares to hear your ramblings, Felicity countered. I may have failed, but another will surely free the principality from the curse that is your existence, Reaper. Your stubbornness is to be commended, Clara praised mockingly. I reiterate, Centaur, you will be punished accordingly. Do your worst, Reaper. I don't fear death, and I don't fear you, Felicity declared in defiance. Clara blinked in surprise. Then her lips curled and twisted into a victorious smile that sucked the breath out of Felicity's lungs. I'm afraid you're mistaken, Centaur. I'm not going to lay a single finger on you, nor will any of the forces at my disposal. You're not worth my attention, contempt, or even my recognition. You are nothing. Disposable trash. More worthless than the lowest commoner. Why should I sully my hands with your repugnance? Felicity's eyes widened and her breathing became ragged. No, you can't. I can't? It's already done, Centaur. You may be my prisoner, but you hold no value to me except for a single purpose, to deliver a message. Your usefulness begins and ends there. What happens to you after that is not of my concern, Clara declared, her eyes showcasing no emotion. House Centaur will pay a high price for my return, Felicity pleaded suddenly. Riches, favors, agreements. What more could I gain from you? Clara asked, marked with a domineering giggle. The ships alone will grant me great personal wealth. Not that I need it as princess and member of House Astor. I have countless prisoners at my disposal. Your storage bays are mine, as is every piece of equipment found in your... Oh, excuse me. My vessels are now mine, from rations to salvaged fighters, weapons, and of course the ships themselves. Most commoners have already been taken in, and most of them are joyful to serve under the prince as true sons and daughters of the principality once more. The few that remain are of little interest but will face no repercussions. They were only obeying their noble leaders, were they not? Another mocking giggle echoed in the cell as Clara slowly lowered herself to be at Felicity's eye level. It must be frustrating to know you could have returned with a useful but largely unimportant treaty with House Ferentis. Your fleet intact and unscathed. Now look at you, wounded, defeated, and imprisoned. And the worst part? You brought it upon yourself, Felicity. You lost 2 ships and their crews wholesale for nothing. You sacrificed them for nothing more than to sate your petty ego. Felicity gritted her teeth and she trembled for several moments before her voice resonated once more. You can't do this to me, dull-witted creature. How many times must I repeat myself? It is already done, Clara declared. Show mercy. I demand mercy, Felicity cried out, begging on the verge of tears. Why should I show you any? Clara countered, her voice carrying a sepulchral cold that froze Felicity's bones and veins. You will be returned to my uncle in disgrace. How? I'm not certain yet, but you will be returned as you are now. I'll allow my uncle and House Centaur to judge you for your monumental failures. But I'm not heartless. Your treaty with House Ferentis stands unaffected, she said, twisting the invisible knife-say upon Felicity's heart slowly and cruelly. Now I shall give you the message I wish to send my uncle. Not in paper or recording, but in voice. Pay attention, Felicity. Memorize my words carefully, for I will come every day until your release, and these exact words will be the only thing that I shall tolerate leaving your filthy mouth. Clearing her throat, Clara suddenly grabbed Felicity's jaw, squeezing it until her mouth opened. Duke Cornelius Draymore, traitor to the principality, your ambitions will never see fruition. Victory has eluded you now and will forevermore. With kind regards, Clara Astor, second princess of the Astorian Principality. Clara finished and let go of Felicity. The dark-haired woman coughed a few times, then looked at her captor. Repeat it. Duke Cornelius Draymore, traitor to the principality, your ambitions will never see fruition. Victory has eluded you now and will forevermore. With kind regards, Clara Astor, second princess of the Astorian Principality, Felicity repeated weakly, each word flaying what remained of her eviscerated pride mercilessly. Good. You've earned yourself more painkillers. I imagine your arm must ache and sting terribly. Yet another proof of your mistakes, Clara declared, standing up. Memorize those words well, Felicity. Oh, and before you even think about altering my message or not saying it at all, I will know. Fail at this simple task, and I promise you this. Another house will be added to my tally. Despicable, heartless, unrepentant monster, Felicity replied weakly. She tried to glare at the princess, but failed. Instead, she turned her gaze to the floor. I will do as you demand, Reaper. Know this, however, that I showed mercy upon your rabid beast. She took in a deep breath. Had he killed Casimir, he would have gained a powerful and dangerous enemy in his father, Andrew Cayston. In fact, after what he did to his most beloved son, may his death be a painful, shameful one. Is that all you have to say? I expected more than an empty threat, Clara declared and sighed. The privacy field died as she turned around while Cynthia opened the cell. Wordlessly, the duo left, leaving Felicity Centaur locked up once more. Unbeknownst to them, Felicity found the strength to smile in the loneliness of her cell. Although she had no hope of escaping her situation, a small victory could still be hers. Patience was all it required. Nornavio, medical wing, several hours later. Maximilian Userek stirred and immediately regretted it. Breathing burned him, but the pain was tolerable. Opening his eyes as full consciousness returned and awoken his senses, he felt the pressure of a breathing mask on his face. He tried to move, but he was far too weak to lift himself into a sitting position, even if he hadn't noticed he was inside a Medicare pod a moment after his failed attempt. Looking to his left, he saw Princess Clara Astor's visage, looking down on him with practiced seriousness. However, he could faintly see the eagerness in her eyes, the little trembles running across her body, and the betrayal of her eagerness. "Princess!" He spoke, his voice gravelly as a faint, rasping pain clung to his throat. "I'm alive?" "Very much so, Maximilian," Clara said. "I was informed you had woken up, but you kept fading in and out of consciousness for over 20 minutes. It appears my patience has been rewarded." "I see. The last thing I remember was being beaten," he said, smiling. He was crazy. Setting a trap, with himself as the bait. "Clever. A desperate tactic for a desperate time," Clara agreed. "You may not believe me, Maximilian, but I'm relieved beyond measure that you survived. No matter their allegiance, lone wolves are too valuable to be lost needlessly." "Then that means you were victorious," Maximilian concluded, momentarily closing his eyes. "Do they yet live?" "Javier Wunder and those who followed him made planetfall hours ago. He caused a mutiny within the gallant venture as he fled, which incidentally allowed the capture of Felicity Centaur and Casimir Cayston. He is resting nearby, kept asleep after the injuries he sustained." "Coward!" Maximilian said, cursing Javier's name and bloodline internally. "I knew he was spineless, but to such an extent? Disgraceful." Taking a slow, deep breath, he continued. "What happened to Centaur and little Cayston?" Felicity was deeply acquainted with the consequences of her actions. Casimir faced punishment for the role he played. He will recover. "Eventually," Clara replied, unfazed. "That fool of a woman," Maximilian lamented, trying but failing to shake his head in disapproval. "So, now what? Am I your prisoner to parade or keep?" Clara giggled. "Technically speaking, you never swore fealty to Duke Draymore out of your volition. You are bound by contract and honor to House Centaur. In essence, you could be considered a mercenary. As it stands, I don't know what to do with you, Maximilian." Maximilian smiled. "Do you expect me to believe that a cunning princess such as yourself don't have a plan ready?" He closed his eyes when Clara simply gave him a coy, playful smirk in response. "Your offer is rejected." Disheartened, Clara let out a disappointed groan. "I haven't told you what I can give you in exchange for your services, Maximilian the Roaring Thunder Userek." "I care not for it, Princess," he began. "I hope to face Redford Kalen in battle, yet regular pilots ultimately bested me. I'm past my prime, I see that now. A pleased, satisfied smile formed on his lips. My desired target eluded me. But Wyatt Staples gave me a most thrilling battle. It is a shame he had to die, but such is the life among the stars. Clara tilted her head and pursed her lips in a poor attempt at innocence. Dead? My personal fighter pilot? Why, who told you such baseless lies, my dear Maximilian? I remember his fighter exploding, striking the killing blow. He can't be alive, Maximilian countered. Is that so? She turned her head away and spoke. Then I must be ill-informed or easily deluded, for I see my pilot alive and breathing. Wyatt, if you please. Maximilian, confused and surprised by Clara's words, watched as the heterochromatic-eyed man stepped into his field of view, wearing a clean, pressed uniform. He stared at the man for long moments before rasping out a single word. How? I ejected as I passed behind the debris, Wyatt answered. Maximilian stared at Wyatt in disbelief for long moments, then smiled and tried to laugh, but couldn't. Then my defeat is complete and utter. Your defeat? Wyatt questioned. You defeated me in combat, Lord Maximilian. Nonsense, I was the one who was defeated. Your apparent sacrifice made it so, the lone wolf countered. I couldn't do anything against you. There was nothing I could do on my own to escape you, let alone defeat you, Lord, Wyatt pressed on. I beg to differ. You offered a more than worthy challenge. It is I who couldn't see your movements in full, Maximilian argued. If I may interject before this verbal duel escalates? Cynthia spoke up, walking into view. Both of you won and lost in equal measure. Maximilian Userek defeated you in single duel and combat, Wyatt. You were outmatched in almost every single regard. However, you claimed overall victory in the field of battle and provided the opportunity to remove Maximilian as a combatant. I agree with Lady Cynthia, Maximilian said, closing his eyes. Ultimately, as the saying goes, I won the battle, but you won the war. My defeat is total, and seeing as you survived, then the bounty is yours to claim. Bounty? Wyatt asked, taken aback. I'm your prisoner, Lieutenant Staples. I am more than willing to pay my ransom. My equipment is yours. The remains of my fighter are yours, and if you desire it, my services will be yours for the taking. My riches, my lands. Name the prize! I will pay it as tradition and honor dictate! Maximilian exclaimed, awaiting the answer. Wyatt took a step closer to the pod, then shook his head. We were just doing our duty, Lord Maximilian. Despite the circumstances that forced us to face each other in combat, that conflict ended there. You tried to kill me. I tried to kill you. No more is needed to be explained. I refuse to take anything from you, Lord. Maximilian's eyes shot wide while Clara and Cynthia looked on curiously. Are you mocking me? Why? Wyatt countered. To refuse your right of bounty? His eyes narrowed. He searched his eyes, his expression for anything, any hint of his deception or the simple desire to inflict upon him shame and humiliation. But no matter how deeply he searched, none could be found. No! You're not like that. You mean it. Why would you? What do you gain from such a ridiculous proclamation? I faced a lone wolf in combat and survived. Thanks to you, Lord, I wish to improve and be a better pilot, Wyatt confessed. Maximilian stared at Wyatt for long moments, and for a moment he saw himself reflected in Wyatt during his younger, naive years of idealism and wanderlust. Are you certain of this? Do you deny your rightful bounty? If you so desire it, I could break serve Her Majesty's banner. Clara stiffened at the proposal but said nothing. Wyatt nodded. I'm sure. You're not my prisoner, Lord. Maximilian, the lone wolf said. Call me by my name. I'll suffer not the man who defeated me to call me with such formality. Ah, my helmet. Where is my helmet? Safely stored, Clara replied with a gentle smile. Then take it. It's yours to keep, Wyatt Staples. Your trophy, so that everyone across the Principality knows that the roaring thunder was silenced by your hand, Maximilian exclaimed. But He gladly accepts your gift, Lord Userek, Clara interjected, almost shaking as she did so. For you, Princess. Do with the remains of my fighter as you wish. I have no need for it anymore, Maximilian proclaimed. I was defeated soundly. My contract binds me to House Centaur for as long as I remain to be a lone wolf. Then so, a lone wolf no more I'll be. A gasp escaped the princess's throat. Maximilian, I urge you not to make such decisions in your current estate. Maximilian merely looked at her with weak, tired eyes. My wounds aren't disabling. I know this, but I'm satisfied with the outcome. I've tasted what true defeat is, and enjoyed the sweetness of an intense, real battle against a great pilot full of surprises. What more can I ask for? My time as a lone wolf is at an end. As darkness began to creep at the edges of his vision, Maximilian focused on Wyatt. In a flash of memories, he relived their battle from start to finish. Silently, he made a decision before falling asleep once again.